Welcome to Wellness with Purpose.
Because someone asked me, how is it that you show up and everyone else is, all downtrodden and, complaining, and you show up with a smile? It's like, hey, let's go, let's do this thing, they said like it was a compliment because like you don't seem like you're doing it. It's not a fake thing. It's not this what we call now toxic positivity. It's like, no, how are you showing up happy all the time? Like we want to know. So I started, in my corporate roles, like bringing in more things I'd learned from yoga, bringing in more things, I'd learned from meditation.
Today we have the founder of Spirit Stone Wellness, certified hypnotherapist, Reiki master, yoga teacher, well-being coach, and soon-to-be author, Amber Heinrich. Amber, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
I love that. Okay, so let's just go there. I was reading about you so you grew up in Commune, a school bus, and a teepee. And then you built 25 years of corporate career. So that's not a story I hear every day. So
Yeah.
how did those two worlds, like one where you grew up and one you built a career in, end up
Yeah.
living in the same person?
It isn't the standard path. I'll definitely give you that. I came about it honestly. My my parents growing up, they were both like a different kind of hippie. So my mother was all peace, love, and happiness, and my father was a little bit more, like in his hippie years. He's changed since. He's a little bit more the sex, drug, and rock and roll kind of hippie, and we had a very bohemian lifestyle. And so as a child, I was exposed to a lot of just interesting people, interesting cultures, and just an expansion of knowledge. And early on, like going to yoga classes with my mom, doing festivals, going to, like you mentioned, the teepee. That was a part of a Native American get together in Oregon that would happen. And, lots of different groups would get together, and some would stay after, but all the kids would sleep together, like in a teepee with someone, watching over us while the parents were enjoying the festival. So there's just lots of interesting things that I was exposed to that weren't necessarily standard. And I think that probably did frame a lot of my mindset and my openness. How that translated into a corporate career, that is a little bit of a different path, right? Well, and just to be like fully frank, like I didn't have this like master plan when I was going into college. I have no idea what I want to do, but there's one thing I know, and I don't want to be poor. And that's a horrible, like, that's honestly what was driving me. Is like, I want to do something that, I will be able to have some financial, reward and freedom from. So I went in to the business school, but I was still like the hippie me, like, so, but I'm like, I'm going to learn business, and I'm going to figure this out. Like, there's something I can offer, I'm not sure what that is yet, but we'll figure it out. So I ended up majoring in marketing. And, when I left college, the only thing I really knew how to do that I felt like anyone might pay me for is writing. So I went into PR and I did a lot of writing, and I had a lot of really wonderful mentors and guides early on in my career that I think a lot of kids don't have, getting out of college now, like the same level of mentorship. There's like a lot of
I
formal
agree.
training. Yeah. Yeah, formal, just exposure to things and coaching and things like that I feel like was really beneficial for me. And through that path, I realized I was, like I really love the creative aspect of what I could bring. So I was writing creatively. I was also doing yoga, and continuing some of my personal practice, doing meditation and all of those things. But every day I was showing up to a corporate job. So whether that was agency life and PR agencies, then I went into more of a corporate communications role for a pharmaceutical company. Then, translated that into working on the Olympics bid for Chicago 2016. I don't know how that happened. We didn't get the Olympics then, but it was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can go back to a boring corporate job after this. This is, what do I do now? So I feel like there's all these evolutions and reinventions that we do of ourselves, and it just sort of unfolded naturally for me. I ended up going into consulting.
Okay.
Someone which is a kind of a weird ride, because most of people, if they're going to go into consulting, they do it right out of school, and I'd always seen consultants show up and they seemed, well, what I told the chief bid officer when he was like, hey, have you considered consulting? I was like, no, those people show up and they're in dark suits and they look angry all the time. Like, that's not me. I'm not a consultant. Like, no. There's a different way of doing things, so I ended up going into consulting, and that exposed me to so many even more, companies
Okay.
and more ways of doing things and more cultures. And I got really interested in how change happens. And that had been kind of a through line for me, but I hadn't really formalized it professionally until I got into consulting. And there was this thing called, change management. I didn't know that existed, but they're like, hey, yeah, when companies go through big mergers and acquisitions or other, major changes, they need someone to help, people along the journey because it's really disruptive. And
Mhm.
when people don't accept a change, it doesn't work out well for the company or anyone, and no one embraces it. So, like, yeah, using my communication skills, I kind of was able to bridge that into more change leadership. And I loved that aspect. I loved making it easier and more graceful for people to experience the changes that are going to happen anyway.
Yeah, I feel so you are carrying both the whole world the whole time. Your corporate world and of course your experience from your childhood. And
Right.
at some point you made the decision to leave all that behind.
Yeah.
The executive, the titles, the corporate world, and you build
Yeah.
the stone, the spirit stone wellness.
Hmm.
So, what was the moment or the feeling that made you say, okay, I actually have to do this?
Yeah. So, not to be all cliche and everything, but I was in Bali, and at a yoga retreat. But really, truly, like, I travel has always been something that has restored me. So, I frequently, my husband and I travel a lot. Also went on some solo like yoga retreats and things like that to just reset. And I started to formulate the idea for this book, and so it really started with the book, and what have I, because someone asked me, how is it that you show up and everyone else is, all downtrodden and, complaining and, like you show up with a smile. It's like, hey, let's go, let's do this thing, and like, and they said like it was a compliment because like you don't seem like you're doing it. It's not a fake thing. It's not this what we call now toxic positivity. It's like, no, how are you showing up happy all the time? Like we want to know. So I started, in my corporate roles, like bringing in more things I'd learned from yoga, bringing in more things, I'd learned from meditation, and and trying to help people like, okay, let's start the meeting. Let's all just breathe. Let's just take a moment and pause. Like so simple things like that. Bring that in, and that conversation made me think, well, maybe there's some things that, could help people if I wrote them down, so I started, figuring out like what I might say in a book,
Mhm.
and the book then became kind of a passion for, wow, like I would like to actually do this full time, like I started bringing as much as I could into my corporate roles, and I was like, but there's a little bit of a limit, like you can bring your spirit, into your corporate life, but you kind of check it out the door a little bit, like you can't like, talk about too much woo woo when you're, or but like I feel like people really missed like having, that energy, that comes whatever, their spirituality means to them, not necessarily religion specific, but people kind of check that at the door. And that's one of the things that makes us whole. We're mind, body, and spirit. You can't
Yeah.
just like ignore one part. So I
Yeah.
started writing a lot of things down that
Okay.
I did differently, with the thought that I would bring that into a book, and then I wanted to build a business out of it. So that whole like learning how the business thing was like, hey, maybe this is, what sort of prepared me to bring, more of my creativity and my passion for helping people and the business side together with Spirit Stone Wellness. So I was all ready to start this company, and another client called and he was like, hey, I've got this great opportunity. And it was to do something at Blue Origin, like in this aerospace industry. And it sounded so incredible. It's like, that is too weird and wonderful not to do. So I sort of put the business on the back burner for another 2 years.
Okay.
I started working on it, kept working on it, kept writing the book, and after 2 years, I was, like, I was ready, so I submitted the book, to Hay House, as part of a writing community, and won a package to publish the book. So I'm actively publishing that right now. But in the meantime, while I was like kind of finishing up all the book and the editing, developed a coaching practice, developed the business, over the last year, because I started that last year. So yeah, it's been great. It's been a wild ride. Being an entrepreneur is very different than being in corporate. But it takes a whole lot of different skills, and you're the only one wearing a lot of the hats a lot of the time. And so that part, like that, I knew it intellectually, but it's one thing to know it, it's another thing to do it. So, but that it's I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's been a wonderful ride. I'm really excited for the book to come out this year.
Wow.
So yeah,
Congratulations.
that's my wild story.
Yeah, I love that because, of course, as you said, it's never just one thing. It's like a slow ball, and you have like a variety of experiences, and and then suddenly the ball grew up, and you can't ignore it anymore. So now you have your company, and you describe your ideal client as someone who is outwardly successful but inwardly crashing. And I think this is going to hit a lot of people who might be listening. So what actually look like in real life? And what are the signs that you see that someone is in that place?
Yeah. And, I've been in that place too, like, so most of my career, like I was able to use all my yoga, my meditation, the things in my personal practice to mitigate the stress. But, at one point there came a point where it was just too much. And the things that I normally did to reset just didn't work anymore, and so it's this sort of, and people call it burnout, and burnout gets overused, but it's this sort of mind, body, spirit exhaustion. I've heard from a lot of my clients recently, just feeling depleted is what brought them, to seek wellness coaching, so feeling depleted, so that it can look like that. There's a term called executive fatigue that a lot of people are mentioning. And, it's true. Like, but all of it kind of ties back to accumulated stress. So when we are not resetting and the stress is just going, a lot of people probably know this, but stress is a cycle. And, if you don't reset it, then it just keeps accumulating, and when it gets to a certain point, your body just freaks out like this. It's just too much, and so, the idea between like being outwardly successful and inwardly crashing, like a lot of people are just afraid, they're afraid to let people see what's going on, internally. So they're showing up to meetings like their normal self, and inside their inner dialogue is like, you're a total fraud, like whatever your inner voice, whatever the nasty inner voice is, like that's going. They're tired. They feel like they're going through all the motions. They're doing the right things. They're showing up. They're doing their job. They're, not failing, they're outwardly successful, but inwardly, like it doesn't feel good. Maybe they're not sleeping, they're inevitably show up, our body, in our mind when we're in that state. So, and I've worked with so many people, in leadership positions, and otherwise, so when they say executive fatigue, that doesn't mean you have to be an executive. Like everyone is, whether you're in the corporate world, you're in healthcare, you're working from home, you're an entrepreneur, you're a family, you're raising a family. Like the stress accumulation in today's world is like a huge issue. So that's where I kind of come in, and I joke about it a little bit when I say like I mainly work with professionals, but like, hey, I can help anyone with a brain reprogram it for well-being. Like that is what I'm in it for. Like my clients are mainly in the professional field. That's just because it's the world I know. But I love helping people understand what's going on in their mind and body, and resetting that and reprogramming it. And not just like going on a vacation and coming back like that was great, and then bam, you're in all the same level of stress.
Cycle begins.
Yeah, but like truly, okay, have that reset. Like I host reset events, too, because there's something about taking yourself out of the environment that you're in and totally dedicating yourself to your well-being for a short amount of time. But if during that time you don't learn how to reintegrate, and how to change when you get back into your world, it's just all the stress is just gonna come back, So I like to focus on teaching people the tools so they don't need to come back to me all the time, so they leave with the tools that they can manage, their own well-being.
That's such a real descriptions. And I what I love about the way you said that they are feeling depleted. And and it's quiet, and it sneaks up onto you. And so many people, they show up with the faces so strong every day, like smiling, but inwardly they are going down. So, of course, and your approaches is blending so many modalities,
Yeah.
coaching, hypnotherapy, Reiki, yoga, Ayurveda. And that's actually very unusual. So, how do you decide what someone needs?
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing about me is normal, apparently. Yeah. That's how I roll. Yeah. So and you touched on it right there. Like it really does depend on the individual. Like what is going on
Mhm.
with whatever client is coming to me. Like I had a client call me out of the blue and she was like, I have a half an hour. I have a meeting, in a half an hour with legal. I am absolutely losing it. Like I don't I can't like come back to me. Like she's completely stressed, like
Mhm.
in a senior level position, worried about her future, at the company. She had heard there were layoffs. She couldn't, like put that out of her mind. She had a very important meeting where she needed to show up, so in that moment, we didn't have time to just like, okay, well, let's step back and, at that point, we needed a quick fix.
Yeah.
So that is exactly what we did. Like we just like, all right, close your eyes. We are, we're going to do like some Reiki and some hypnotherapy to just get you in a place where you're back to feeling like yourself, so you can go into that meeting. Then after that, we are going to have a real session where we actually like yeah, like plan to give you what you need to do this in a more sustainable way. So it really depends. What are they going through in the moment? What kind of stressors there are, what practices they have already. And, some people have never done yoga, that's all right. Like some people don't like yoga, not, so I'm not recommending that to everyone, but there are two things I do recommend to everyone is learning how to manage your energy. And whether you do that through meditation or through Reiki, self Reiki, there's a lot that we can do to manage our energy, and not all of us know that. So like I think giving people some tools and ways to come back to feeling like themselves and manage their energy, I feel like is one of the things I do consistently with everyone. But yeah, depending on the individual, like some people are like, hypnotherapy, what is that? Like that sounds scary. They've only seen maybe stage hypnotists that are like, getting people to talk like chickens or, like that's a performance. That's different.
And that's an art,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's
I mean, when people comes in saying that they need this, maybe they need hypnotherapy, but oftentimes you feel that they actually need something very different. So,
yes.
what's your process? How do you determine that they are looking for the hypnotherapist, but actually this is something underlying, something different?
Yeah, well, I do have like a standard intake sort of process where we just kind of talk about things. I have a whole list of questions. But honestly, like you can tell, like if someone comes in and they say, like I need hypnotherapy, then my first question is, have you had hypnotherapy before? Like what do you feel like hypnotherapy is going to do for you? Like what are you trying to accomplish? Like what's your goal? So we really try and get at the very beginning, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to fix? What do you want? And a lot of people know what they don't want, but they don't necessarily know what they
What they
want. So
want.
part of our
Correct.
beginning process is figuring out, okay, what do you actually want? And what are you doing and what's going on in your life? So we kind of look at different areas of your life, like, from your finances to your relationships. What are you doing at work? What's going on at home? What do you do for fun? Like, so just trying to get a sense for the whole person and what they
Okay.
actually want, and then becomes a lot easier to pinpoint how I can help them get to where they want to be. Yeah.
And about your book, Debug Yourself, is it going to be published?
Mhm.
Oh my,
Yeah,
like
it's
it's
gonna be
about your mind and body and spirit. Where did that idea come from?
so yeah, that and that to your earlier point where you're like, wow, you got a lot of different modalities going on.
By the way,
Um,
I love that name.
yeah.
It's a
Me
very
too.
corporate and very tech savvy name.
Yeah. It's like I feel like there's a toolbox, and like these are all tools in the toolbox. You don't use a hammer when you need a screwdriver, like there's a time and a place for all of these things, but The idea for the book, it all comes kind of down to your mind and the role that your thoughts play in your mindset and your wellness. So if you can change your thoughts, you can really change, your entire life. And I think that might even be a book that I'm accidentally quoting. But if you can change your mindset, if you can change the way you're thinking about things, then that changes your emotions. It changes your experience. It changes how you react. It changes the actions that you take. And all of these things kind of loop back around to changing your mindset, and change your mindset then influences, the actions that you take. So it's like this loop that happens, but it starts with your thoughts. So if you're thinking about things like, this is terrible, this sucks, I'm always complaining about, if you're always complaining about something, how can you think about it differently? Is usually one of the questions that I'll ask. Like, how can we think about this differently? Have different thoughts. If your inner voice is saying mean, nasty things to you all the time, let's change that. Like that's something that really needs to change. So the idea for the book came around, how people inherently, I believe, they're not broken. People know how to fix themselves. As a coach, I know it's really a matter of just like pulling out, the inner wisdom that everyone has. But there's some bugs, that we might have, like in our programming, and our bodies and our thoughts, and a lot of time are running on autopilot. Which in some way we can feel exhausted a little bit, and so like, hey, let's get into that, and let's figure out where the bugs are, and help you reprogram those for well-being, and then you have you react to things differently. Your experience of the day is different. Your thoughts are different, and therefore your experience is different. So Debug Yourself is really just like, hey, let's look at those little things that are hanging you up, or the big things, and give you the person, reading. Or I use the same, system for my coaching and events and my online course as well, but give people the tools that they need to debug the little things that are taking them away from, what they ultimately want to be, which is healthy and happy and peaceful and prosperous and free, and, like all the things that we all, want as humans. But our thoughts are usually the culprit that's taken us away from that. So the book itself is about, giving people the tools to do that, but also giving everyone a different way of being almost. And I know it sounds kind of bizarre, like you're in a yoga class and they're like, be present. What does that mean? So a lot of it is breaking down some of the things that we hear and don't know really what that means into tangible things that people can understand and people can do and people can apply in their life, so they can be more in their life. They could be in the flow. They can remember who they really are, and be that, person, and also to be in joy. So a lot of this is about how you show up differently. How are you being different in the world, and how knowing how to do that changes your complete experience. So it's all about presence and abundance and transformation and happiness, because that's my framework is the path of well-being is an acronym. So PATH stands for presence, abundance, transformation, and happiness. But there's a current of purpose that kind of runs through the entire framework. So looking at inner purpose and outer purpose and higher purpose and shared purpose, and kind of packaging all that together, with just tangible things that people can do to show up to their lives differently.
And I love the framing of your book, like Debug Yourself. Of course, because most of the people, when they hear wellness, they think it's a spa day. And here now you are basically saying that, no, this is the full system rewrite.
Yeah, it is.
So,
It is.
and you're
It's an
talking about
upgrade.
your,
Yeah.
of course, it's an upgrade as a software upgrade. And we
Yeah.
have to
Well,
do
we all understand tech now, right? Like we're all, to varying degrees, different degrees, but like tech
Yes.
is part of our world,
Yes,
so
of course.
understand that we have to periodically reset, we have to reboot, we have to upgrade, we have to debug. These are all things that happen in technology, but they're also going on in us. Yeah.
And you're talking about your path program that was a purpose, abundance, transformation, and happiness, and the path forward. So, if you had to pick like one part that changes people the most, or that creates some shift fundamentally, which one is it and why?
Ooh, wow. Yeah, that's a good question. I think honestly, it's presence, because that is one of the hardest things to find, in our world these days, like truly being in your life and not being distracted, finding moments where you can just truly be exactly where you are, and be in your body and be aware of your, five senses, to be in nature, to truly be in your life is kind of a miraculous thing, because most of us are going from buzzing from here to there, and we don't feel like we're anywhere. It's just mass confusion. It's survival mode. Literally, our brain is in survival mode, and it's
They
like,
call it a fight or flight mode.
yes, yeah. So learning how to stop that fight and flight, fight, flight, freeze. I think there's some other apps we've added since, like, yeah, but yeah. So to stop, you can't stop that response from happening. It's biological. It just kicks in when our body's stressed, and our body doesn't recognize, okay, there's a lion chasing me and there's an email that really made me angry. Like those have the same response,
Yes. Okay.
So our body, like the lizard brain that evolved first, has the same response to those things, so we can't stop that from happening, and we don't want to, because then we wouldn't react when we really need to have that response. But we can notice it, and reset it. So that's why I say presence is probably the most important, and that's where we start. So you can find, that awareness and that way to reset and come back to closing that loop, stopping the stress response, being in your life. And yeah, like that's kind of table stakes. If you can do that, like you're so far ahead of the rest of the world. Your attention span will start to improve. Your peace of mind, your body, like without that stress, will start to normalize, like all the things, that stress. I think it's like 95% I've seen of disease has stress as a contributing or major factor. So it's no joke. People are like, oh, I'm just stressed. Oh, okay. Well, you're just kind of killing yourself slowly. Please don't do that. You need to not be. So yeah, like I do think like presence it's no joke. The most important thing for people to reset their stress response and learn how to do that in their everyday life.
I love that you're saying that, saying it out loud. Yes, present. It's easy to say be present, but are people being present? So, like creating awareness in your own self, I think it's the biggest challenge right now.
Yes.
Yeah,
It
amazing.
really is.
So,
And people are like, I'm present, I'm here, like, no. That's different saying. But, I have this, I call it my 5-minute bug fix, and it really, that starts with presence. And there's just like 5 things. Do it, each of these things for a minute each. And, that, teaching people that, I think is something that they can walk away with and have something. If you just do those things, that.
tell me more. Tell me more.
Okay, so, and it all like kind of relates back to my framework. So first is like truly being in your life, right? So we talked about presence. So pausing, finding presence, and just that pause, like, and if you can pause and just breathe, and people, if you're in the midst of chaos, incidentally, and someone tells you to just breathe, you're going to get angry, like, so I get it. Like people like, just breathe, flip a table, eyes roll, but seriously, like your breath is the fastest way to come back to resetting your stress, to come back to normalizing your body's, stress response system. So like, yes. So first, pause for a minute, just a minute. Everyone has a minute. So even if you can't do the rest of the things, then just pause for a minute and breathe, find that presence. And then the second thing is finding the flow. So being in a flow state, if you can find what's charged, like, so every situation that we're in, like our brain is constantly, do I like this? Do I not like this? Is it positive? Is it negative? There's really no true neutral. So if you find yourself agitated, you do the first thing, you pause, you breathe. Then you look at what's firing me up, and then put your hands on your belly and just sort of let that charge dissipate. So let that come down. And then the third thing is just coming back to the mindset that you want. So after you've like for a minute with your hands on your belly, just like let that charge come down, down, down. And then come back to, okay, what do I want my mindset to be? So this is making a choice. This is coming back. Who am I fundamentally as a person? How do I like to show up? Am I showing up that way? how can I think about things differently that are more aligned with who I really am, So like taking that moment to just, okay, what do I want my thoughts to be, and to change those. And that kicks out the response, that the loop that we talked about. The fourth thing is really just opening your heart. So being in joy, and we can't always be in joy, right? So we're just coming off something. We've settled ourselves down a little bit. We've decided like how we want to show up. Now find something that you're grateful for. So gratitude will bring us back to, we can't always be like giddy happy in every moment, but you can't always find something to be grateful for. So fourth thing is just, okay, find something that brings you joy, or find something that brings you gratitude, like if you can't be in. And then the fifth is just, I call that like being in the change, like be the change, actually truly be the change. So if you can imagine what you want the situation to be, you've calmed yourself down, you've made a choice, you've elevated your energy with gratitude or joy. And now it's like truly feeling the feeling of what you want the situation to be. And by that, I mean, just like make a mental movie of like seeing yourself, like say it's a presentation you're giving, you're anxious about it. See yourself 20 minutes out. You've given a wonderful presentation. It's gone well. You're through it. It's over. You feel great. Like you're getting positive reviews from people, whatever it is. Just like imagine what you want the scenario to be, and just feel the feeling of it. And it may not turn out exactly like that, but remember the feeling, like take the feeling of it, of that, like, oh, relief, a comfort. Okay. Like, pride, whatever it is, just like, and truly just embody that and feel it just for a minute. And putting your hand on your heart and your belly when you do that just sort of takes that like into your body. So yeah, that's, I do a lot of like, just like placing your hand on your heart or your belly, putting your hand somewhere, that really takes everything out of your mind and puts it a little bit more in your body. And there's like a ton of neurons that are actually like, neurotransmitters throughout your body. Your belly is like your second brain. So if you can put your hands there, put your attention there, that your brain's like, okay, if she's sitting there with her hands on her belly, breathing slowly and thinking about gratitude, she's probably not in too much danger. So we can chill out. Like we can stop the stress response now, so your brain is taking cues from what you're doing to see, am I in danger, or am I safe, so when you can sit there and just breathe, put your hands and your attention on your belly, or put your, hands on your heart, like that just brings all of that together.
Wow, that's beautiful. And that's like a pieces of like wise nuggets you have given our audiences. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope they take the 5-minute bug fix. Yes, do those 5 things. Yeah, be in your life. That's presence. Be in the flow. That's just taking the charge out, and finding the flow again. Being who you really are, like who do you want to be? How do you want to show up? Being in joy,
Great.
finding that joy or gratitude, and then just being the change, imagining it and feeling it and making it real and stepping inside that. And if you can go through those things, it takes more than 5 minutes to explain, but I swear, like if you can just do each of those things for like 1 minute, like I even gone into a bathroom stall, like when I was in my corporate, job, and just like, okay, I'm just going to stay here in this stall and just do this. And then I will emerge and I will be absolutely fine, but
Wonderful.
take the time you need. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I really love this.
For the opportunity. Yeah, it's so nice to talk to you. And yeah, I've really enjoyed this so much. I'm so glad we got to meet each other.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's actually hard, like building wellness practice. You are serving very high performers, people who are actually being the most capable person in the room, but they has to come with some interesting frictions. So
Yeah.
what are these client they resist most when you are first starting or maybe working with them?
Yeah. First, well, habit change is hard for all of us.
Tell me
So
about it.
yeah, right? Like we're like, I want to be well, but then I just don't, you have this, you make this commitment and it just doesn't happen. So habit change is a form of resistance, like that, just overcoming the habits that we built, changing, learning I think what's very helpful for people is learn how habits are formed and then where in the habit process you can insert something different, so you get the same reward out of it. So habits again are like again, similar like a loop, where you get some kind of a cue and then some kind of, routine happens, so you get a cue, you do a thing, and then you get some kind of a reward out of it, and that's the simple version like of a habit. But like if you can get the same cue, insert something into the routine that gives you the same reward but is better for you, then you're more likely to do that thing. For example, or you just add to a good habit, that's even better. Like I'm brushing my teeth in the morning and I'm thinking of 3 things that I'm grateful for, or I put my shoes, on the bathroom floor right where I know I'm going to be when I wash my face when I first wake up, or put my contacts in. And that's my cue to, take a walk, or whatever. There's like little ways we can game the system once, we know how habits work. So I think the hardest thing is, figuring out like what our habits are and changing those. So I help a lot of people with that habit change. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel the high achievers, they are really good at optimizing everything except one thing that can actually need to change. So, yeah.
Right. And that also, the funny thing with AI is too, like we are finding so many great ways to give ourselves more time. And what do we do with that time? We do more things. We do more stressful things. And so it's like, hey, no, that is that is not the point. Let's
Yeah.
optimize so we save ourselves a little bit more time so we can spend more time with our family. So we can, take 30 minutes to walk at lunch, like if let's use the time that we're saving ourselves to do something that's actually beneficial for us. That's kind of an eye opener, I think, for some people who are like optimize, 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 optimize,
What are you optimizing for?
sequence. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing that happens when we optimize, 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 and we don't reset our stress, then, because the body, when it's stressed, it like sends all your, it's basically preparing you to run away from something. So like all of the blood, like is all of, all the energy is draining away from our cognitive abilities, so because you don't need to be solving complex math problems when you're running from a lion or a tiger or a bear, so the brain doesn't need the cognitive abilities. But if we're always in stress and we're not resetting that, we're actually dumber, like we're not showing up with our full cognitive ability. And because our attention span is also going down, we're making dumb decisions faster, because we have to like, move, we got to be productive. So like what we really need to come back to is, again, like the stress response, but also like improving our attention span. So that's also something that I work with people with. It's a little bit harder, because, people want to be in that optimize, optimize, optimize. So I can do more, but if you do that stressed, your performance at some point is going to start failing. Yeah. You're not going to be able to operate at your full capacity all the time, because we just can't, because we're human.
Yes. I mean, there is always the flip side of everything, but people are still learning. It's still in the early phases, but we'll
100%.
see. So I also wanted to ask you about something, and I think this is really honest. What are some things that you have tried to grow your business and you think that it just didn't work the way you hoped for? And maybe maybe the lesson you have learned the hard way.
I learned that I needed a lot more time. Maybe that was just me personally, because when I first started, I focused on building the systems that would support me, and I do think that was a good decision, but that also meant that because I was getting a CRM system up, I was building my website, my social presence, like all the things that I needed to support me, system wise, technology wise, and also operations, but in that time. And I did have some clients that like, I had known from my previous, work. So they were able to come with me, so that gave it a little bit of a softer start to my business, because I wasn't having to get new clients immediately. So I could take a little bit of a luxury to focus on building those systems. Cause I knew once I got to scale, if I didn't build the systems right, like then I was in trouble, so I'd seen that like over my years. So I really focused a lot on building the right systems and processes. But then I got to a point where I was like, oh, my pipeline, I don't have one. So like I need to start focusing on that, so building
Partner, yeah.
yeah. So that was definitely
Okay.
yeah. For me, that was okay, yeah, that's looking ahead out a few quarters, like instead of like right now things are great, but looking out a few quarters, what am I doing to make sure that I'm meeting the right people, that I'm engaging with the right people who might need to work with me. Yeah.
And I appreciate you went there, because I think when they are building something this personal, so every misstep is hitting differently, and of course it's just not the business decision; it's little personal too, and
Yeah.
every misstep will make you learn something. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and for an entrepreneur, it's like business and personal, they bleed so closely into each other. It's really hard to
They're
separate.
intertwined. Yes, they are
Mhm.
intertwined.
Yeah.
Okay. And on the flip side, like if we are talking like 12 months from now and the business is exactly where you want to be. So what that world will look like, and
Mm.
how many people you want to be serving.
Yeah, I think where I'm looking to pivot around that time, like right now I'm doing, so I have an online course. I will have the book, so that will be a definite pivot. Like so promoting the book, talking about the book, doing more speaking, like I'm not doing a lot of that now, so that will be something that I'll be needing to do differently. And also focusing more on groups versus individuals. So I started the business very individual one-on-one, but
Mhm.
you can only scale a person so much. There's only so many hours
You have
in the day.
there's only
And,
one app.
and when you're doing healing work, when you're doing deep work with people, you can only do a few sessions realistically every day and do that well. So I'm looking at like, okay, how do I do more of like group programs and things like that in the future that will have broader impact for more people and not, make me a not make me need my own services because I'm depleted. Yeah.
So at least you have like a clear vision of where you want to be. So of course, it's not just a revenue, but also you wanted to make an impact also.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to start a revolution of well-being. So revolutions, right now it's a very small revolution, but I would like that to scale. Like I really want well-being to be something that's commonplace, that that people are talking about at the executive level, that they're really looking at for themselves and their teams and their companies. So I have a pretty big mission. Yeah, in mind. So that and that takes scale. I can't do that one-on-one, like as much as I enjoy that work so much, like I do have to think scale is got to be in the future.
yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So I have to ask, like you have come from the corporate world, you understand technology, and now you work in a very, very human and an intuitive space. So where do you land on AI right now in the wellness industry? So what do you think? It is useful, overhyped, something, or threatening?
Like I think it's going to evolve, like it evolves every day. But I love AI. I use AI, like I think it's very helpful, when you can use it for your own benefit, like so like for productivity, for the things that AI is good at now. AI will get better at other things later, but using, AI for what it's good at now, I think it's great. I don't use it because I'm a writer and I enjoy writing. Like I don't use AI to write. I like writing, like if I'm going to summarize a big document, or something, yeah, I'm going to use AI, like, but if I'm creating, like using AI to do the things that I don't want to do or that take more time and not as much creativity, so I can be more creative and have more time with people. Like, heck yeah, I love it. Like, let's do more of that, please. I'm currently using AI to do a research project for, to find in different markets a specific, type of person that I think would benefit, and be a potential partner with me. So being able to describe what this partnership looks like, what I'm looking for, and have AI look at every market in the US and try and find like people like that or opportunities like that. That's great. That would take me forever. I don't even know how I would do it. So I think AI can be very helpful for us in the wellness space as long as we're using it to benefit our humanity,
And
instead of
mindfully.
replace our humanity. Like, I don't want to do more laundry. I saw this meme. It cracked me up. It's like, I don't want AI to, take my writing and my art, so I can do more laundry and dishes. I wanted to take my laundry and dishes so I can do more art and, creative. So that's not like, that was funny. But that's kind of the idea.
That's a wonderful take.
I would love it if AI could do my dishes and laundry. It's not quite there yet, but but using that in principle, like, what can AI do that that is giving us more time and space to meditate, to be creative, to do the things that we enjoy, to spend more time with our family, to do things better than we can do and faster, but not replacing our ability to think and create. I think there is a danger if we use it to do things that then slowly let our mind atrophy, because we're not being creative, because we're not cognitively solving problems, so there's a real thing to watch, but like any new technology, let's use it for the benefit of humanity. And in that sense, it's a great thing, and it'll only get better.
Yeah, that's actually the right one. I mean, it's not either or. It is how we use it, and of course, mindfully, as you said, mindfully. So here's a fun one. Like, if I handed you like back 10 hours a week, just freed up that time completely, what would you actually do with that time?
If I had 10 extra hours, well, a lot of it I would spend outside because I love being outside.
And doing what?
Hiking. Yeah, I would love to, like, or just being in my backyard, like meditating, like, although it's I'm in Arizona and it's summer, so maybe I wouldn't spend as much time outside. But I would read. I love just reading for fun. I would write, because I'm a creative writer, and I would also, if I had 10 extra hours, I would probably like look at, okay, what else, can I do in my business, that would be beneficial. Maybe I could tweak some of my course, or I could do some little dreaming and whiteboarding about, like, what does my group program look like? How does that work? So I'm already doing that, but like things that, like, brainstorming or spending more time, on things that I enjoy. That's yeah. If I had 10 more hours, heck yeah.
Wonderful. I mean, of course, it usually says a lot of what really matters to you, and everyone should have a clarity. Wonderful. So, last couple of our questions I generally ask to all my guests said, if you go back in time, the version of the Amber who who's still deep in the corporate world, maybe in the mid career, doing all things right, checking all the boxes, what would you tell her?
Oh, what would I tell her? I mean, I would tell her it gets even better, like, yeah, like, I've enjoyed so much, like, the unfolding of life, and if I look at myself, like, kind of mid-career when I was just trying to figure things out, and I, like, just knowing that everything, like, yes, the world is always going to be chaotic. Yes, there will be challenges, but there's so much joy and so much wonder, like, coming, like, if you go back to, like, me when I got my first, like, cell phone, I can't imagine, like, I couldn't have imagined using my cell phone for taking pictures and, accessing all the possible information in the entire universe, like, so
Heck yeah.
it's so much better. Like, so, like, I think we tend as humans to focus on the things that have gone wrong or the things that are challenging, because our brains want to solve problems, and that's good. Like we do need to solve a lot of problems right now, but I would, yeah, I just would encourage people and my younger self to like just keep looking at the joy and the wonder as well, and don't discount that, because there's a lot of it all around us. Yeah.
I think a lot of people needed to hear that,
Yeah.
including me, honestly. Yeah. So what
Thank you. I tell myself the same thing.
so what's next for you? And what are you most excited about building right now?
I'm excited to see where the book goes. Like that's been such a labor of love, to build a thing. And a little bit like it's been my baby. And now it's like it's off at a publisher right now. And I'm a little like, like what is gonna happen? So there's a little bit of that, anticipation, a little bit of that anxiety, but a lot of just enthusiasm and excitement for like what is that gonna bring? Because I don't know. Like I've never been written a book before. I've never been an author. I know it's gonna require different things of me. I have a general sense of what that is, but it's one thing to know it, kind of like being an entrepreneur. It's one thing to know the things, and it's quite another thing to experience them. So I'm excited to experience that.
I love that you have a clear vision, and I love the way that I love your excitement, and we all hope that it's going to be a great success and it's going to make an impact on so many lives.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you. That
So-
is my hope. Yeah.
So we are now coming to the end of the show. So Amber, this conversation is an eye opening and very interesting. You are the personality of various facets, and I would love to have you maybe sometime again to talk more about your about your book. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being honest, and thank you for doing the work that actually matters. And to everyone listening, if any part of this conversation landed you, please share it and send it to someone who needed it today. Because this is how this ripple things actually work. So we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.